Good morning. Welcome to another read aloud. We had a week off, and now I'm going to start a book. It's a series. It's called Everest, Book One, The Contest. So it's very similar to the book that you have in your packet I gave you on the island. Same author, same idea, different setting. And we're going to get started on those. Doing some lit studies with each other in small groups. Less paperwork, more reading and just talking. But this one hopefully will get done in a week because we have just this 1 week before spring break. But the title of the book is called Everest, The Contest by Gordon Korman. Prologue. It was a funeral in every way but one. The body was missing. Not missing exactly. Its location was common knowledge. That was the most horrifying part of all of this. The body was 9,000 miles away in a country called Nepal, 27,000 feet up Mount Everest, the highest point on planet Earth. On Everest, everything above 25,000 feet is known as the death zone. There, overpowering wind gusts approaching 200 miles per hour can wrench a strong person clear off the mountain, and bone-chilling nighttime cold of 100 degrees below zero causes frostbite and hypothermia. Wherever the body was, it was surely frozen solid. 27,000 feet is above the range of any helicopter. At that altitude, the air is simply too thin to provide the rotor blades with any lift. A stranded climber would have a better chance of being picked up off the surface of the moon than in the death zone. Atop Everest, you are your only rescue squad, you and the others who take on the mountain with you. It was easy to spot those teammates among mourners, and not just because of their young age. Their physical bodies fidgeted in the chapel, constricted by grief and tight collars. But their minds were still on the other side of the globe, 5 miles straight up, in the death zone. They had that much in common with their unfortunate friend. It was a place they might never truly leave. Chapter 1. Dominic Alexis arranged the caps and wrappers on his bedroom carpet and examined them for at least the 100th time. E-E-R-E-S-T. He rummaged through the shoebox, searching for the V he knew was not there. R's, T's, dozens of E's. He had counted once. More than 50, and that was weeks ago. Even a few extra S's. Not a single V. That was how these contests worked. Millions of the other letters were stuck under the caps of Summit Athletic Fuel and on the inside wrappers of Summit Energy Bars, distributed to stores all around the world. All around the country. Then they printed up a grand total of 3 V's and shipped them to non-existent addresses in Antarctica. He was exaggerating, of course. There were V's out there, even if just a handful. Over the past weeks, the TV news had shown clips of ecstatic young climbers who had spelled out Everest to qualify for the 5 wildcard spots at boot camp. 4 of those places had been filled. Only one chance remained. At boot camp, the lucky 5 winners would join the American Junior Alpine Association's 15 top young mountaineers for 4 weeks of intensive training and competition. It promised to be a brutal month of 6-hour workouts, night climbs, and marathon hikes carrying heavy packs. But the end result was worth it. The top 4 climbers would earn places on Summit Quest, Summit Athletics Everest Expedition, the youngest team ever to attempt the world's tallest peak. A shout from downstairs interrupted his reverie. "Where's my sand?" It was Christian, Dominic's older brother. Chris didn't have to scramble around garbage cans and recycling bins, scrounging for caps and wrappers. His place at boot camp was already secure. He was the number 2 rated under-17 climber in the country, second only to the Z-Man himself, Ethan Zaff. Chris was talking about his good luck piece, a small glass vial of sand from the Dead Sea. It had been a gift from their grandmother, brought back from a trip to Israel when Chris was a baby, and Dominic hadn't even been born yet. Chris loved the idea that the sand was from the lowest point on the globe. When he started climbing, he strung the vial on a leather cord so he could wear it around his neck. "I'm taking this sucker vertical," he would say before an ascent, and at the top of the rock or cliff or mountain, he would talk to it. "Far from home, baby, you're far from home." It was natural that, as Chris became more accomplished as a climber, it would one day cross his mind to take his good luck piece from the bottom of the world to the top of the world at the summit of Everest. Now, finally, he was getting his chance. Pounding on the stairs, "Come on, Dom, I'm packing up my stuff for boot camp." There was no question that right then Dominic needed luck more than Chris did. The vial of sand clutched in his fist, he opened the sash of the window and expertly eased himself outside. In many neighborhoods, it would probably raise eyebrows to have a 13-year-old climb out a second-story window, but it was a fairly ordinary occurrence around the Alexis home. Sometimes it was just the easiest way down. Vertical was a forbidden direction for most people. For Chris and Dominic, it was as simple as option as left or right. Years before, as little kids, Chris had become the town hide-and-seek champion by scaling a 50-foot tree for aerial surveillance every time he was it. Even Mr. Alexis, when he needed to go up on the roof to check a flapping shingle, never bothered with a ladder. He had grown up in Switzerland, in the shadow of the high Alps, and was responsible for introducing his two sons to this climbing foolishness, their mother's opinion. And anyway, a 30-second climb was better than a face-to-face with Chris over a stolen, borrowed good luck charm. As far as degree of difficulty went, the front of the house was pretty pathetic. Dominic started down, jamming the edges of his sneakers into the narrow spaces between the bricks. As he passed the picture window in the living room, he caught an exasperated look from his mother. He couldn't actually hear her, but instead read her lips as he dropped to the flower bed. "We have a door." But Dominic was already sprinting along Mackenzie Avenue. Preparing for an ascent of Everest required workouts in the 5 to 7 hour range, and he had been matching Chris step for step, pedal for pedal, and stroke for stroke. Only when climbing did Chris still hold an advantage. He was almost 16, bigger, taller, and stronger than Dominic. He could haul himself up a top rope as naturally as a yo-yo returns to the hand playing with it. Dominic was just a month past his 13th birthday and small for his age. The Mackenzie Avenue 7-Eleven was his home away from home. Dominic estimated he had drunk more than 40 gallons of Summit Athletic Fuel in the process of spelling E-E-R-E-S-T. He tried his share of the bars, too, but Summit energy bars were like quick-drying cement. After a few of them, your insides turned to concrete. Better to stick with the liquid. One more bottle. One last try. So what's happening is, I don't know if you guys remember, like McDonald's, they do the Monopoly game where you get the game pieces and you can win prizes by getting certain part pieces. And in most contests like that, there's a lot of pieces for most of the parts, but the ones that actually get you to win are very few. And so that's what he's looking for. And he's taking off like a Gatorade or a cap. This is called Summit Athletic Fuel. It's like Gatorade. And underneath the cap on the inside, they have little letters. And he's looking for the V. Okay. Out of habit, he checked the recycling bin behind the store first, but it was empty except for a couple of soda cans. Inside, he grabbed a bottle of Fruit Medley. The flavors didn't matter with Summit Athletic Fuel. It all tasted the same, like weak, slightly salted lemonade backwash. He paid, walked out, and flopped down on a wooden bench next to the store. Before popping the cap, he addressed the good luck charm the way he had seen his brother do it. "Find me a V and it's Everest or bust. I'll take you to the top of the world." Sheepishly, he looked around to make sure no one had heard. When Chris talked to his little vial of sand, it always seemed cool. But in 7-Eleven parking lot, it was just plain embarrassing. He twisted the cap off and peeked underneath. Another E. Until the wave of disappointment washed over him, he hadn't realized how much faith he had had that his brother's good luck charm would deliver. The leather strap slipped from his fingers, and the vial dropped to the pavement and began to bounce down the small strip mall's parking ramp. Horrified, Dominic stumbled after it. Losing a shot at Everest was nothing compared with what he'd have to face if he came home without Chris's Dead Sea sand. He scrambled like a crab, but the bottle rolled ahead of him, just out of reach. As he ran across the garage entrance, a hulking SUV roared up suddenly. The driver slammed on his brakes, and the big vehicle squealed to a halt just inches from the boy. "What's the matter with you, kid? Why don't you look where you're going?" "Sorry." Dominic picked up the vial and scooted out of the way. Mom had continuous nightmares that climbing would kill at least one member of her family. "I'll bet she wasn't expecting it to happen like this," he reflected, a little shaken. The SUV accelerated up the ramp, pausing at the top. The driver tossed a candy bar wrapper into the trash barrel and drove off. It was a Summit energy bar. Dominic recognized the logo from where he stood, rooted to the spot. He had climbed towering cliffs, yet walking up this gentle slope to get that piece of paper seemed much, much harder. He reached into the garbage and fished out the sticky wrapper. In a way, he almost knew what he would see before he turned it over. A V. It was a ticket to the top of the world. So he spelled Everest, so he's one of those kids that gets to go to the boot camp now. Chapter 2. Cap Cicero wasn't much of a worrier. That time, climbing Mount McKinley, when the boulder dropped from 15,000 feet and whizzed by so close that the wind almost knocked him off the fixed ropes, he didn't worry. His philosophy was, if it misses you, it didn't happen. And if it hits you, then you've really got nothing to worry about. A worrier in the mountaineering business was like a surgeon who fainted at the sight of blood. Neither was likely to make it very far, and Cicero had been racking up death-defying feats and glorious triumphs for 31 of his 47 years. But now, watching the 20 Summit Quest candidates, Cicero fretted that signing on as the team leader might have been a mistake. "They're children," he told Tony Devlin, who ran Summit's sports training facility in High Falls, Colorado. "A trip up Everest takes 25 pounds or more off the average adult. Half of these kids would fade to nothing." "Relax," Devlin soothed. "Look at Ethan Zaff." "I know all about Ethan Zaff," Cicero interrupted. Several months before, Ethan had achieved fame by climbing Everest a few weeks shy of his 16th birthday, the youngest person ever to stand on top of the world. "So where is he?" Devlin chuckled. "He knows he's got a spot guaranteed. Why should he suffer through a month of boot camp?" Cicero humphed, but he knew Ethan Zaff wasn't the problem. At 6'1" and 220 pounds, the kid was built like a lumberjack. Christian Alexis was also adult-sized, but Chris had brought his 13-year-old brother with him. 13. "That was a mistake," Cicero told Devlin. "Chris, I understand, but the brother? Look at him. I don't think he's 5 feet tall." Devlin shrugged. "We didn't pick him. He qualified as a wild card through the retail contest." Cicero raised an eyebrow. "Lucky kid. Either that or he really likes Summit bars." "Or maybe he just doesn't give up until he gets what he's after," suggested Devlin. "Not a bad guy to have on an expedition. I hear he's an A1 climber." Cicero shook his head. "Too small. Can't use him." "Do me a favor," said Devlin. "Don't cut him just yet. Summit got a lot of publicity out of that contest. We want to make it look like the wild cards have a real shot at the team." Cicero nodded wisely. "And then we cut them." "Not necessarily." Devlin reached out and pulled aside a sturdy runner with a mass of dark curls. "Here's one of our wild cards, Rob Barzini. Meet Cap Cicero." The boy turned shining eyes on the team leader. "It's an honor to meet you, Cap. I've read up on some of your expeditions." He grinned broadly, revealing an upper and lower set of gleaming braces. Cicero regarded him in dismay. "When can you lose the iron?" "The orthodontist says I got another 2 years to go." Cicero sighed. "Pack your bags, kid. I can't take that mouth into the 100 below wind chill. The cold will bust your braces and you'll be running around the death zone with a face full of razor blades." There were a few tears, but Rob accepted his fate and headed off to the office to arrange for an early flight home. "You're a tough man," accused Devlin. "It's a tough mountain." Cicero blew his whistle. All around the quarter-mile track, the candidates stopped running and turned to him for instructions. All except Dominic. He kept going, his 20-pound pack whacking him behind his narrow shoulders. The kid sure had stamina. Cicero clapped his hands. "Okay, step it up. Double time. There's no dogging it on the mountain." The running resumed faster this time. Dominic was practically sprinting now. The supreme effort only had the effect of making him look even smaller as he darted around the bigger kids. One time on K2, that's a mountain, Cicero dropped his glove into a crevasse while securing a slipped ladder. He got stuck high on the Abruzzi Ridge and had to bivouac, which spend a 40 below zero night in a cramped ice cave with his exposed hand jammed up the opposite sleeve, clear to the armpit, in order to prevent frostbite. He awoke to the agony of a dislocated shoulder, but he didn't panic. Finding 4 climbers in this lot, that was cause for panic. Okay, he thought, Zaff and Chris Alexis. He needed only 2 more. His eyes immediately traveled to Norman Tilt Crowley, who was lumbering steadily around the track. Tilt, great nickname for a climber, was younger than Ethan and Chris, but almost as big, with the same powerful build and easy athleticism. Plus, he was only 14. If Cicero could somehow get him to the top, it would smash Ethan's record by more than a year. Summit Quest would be on the front page of every newspaper on the planet, which was the whole idea. The purpose of this expedition was advertising, after all. He watched as Tilt rounded the curve and came up behind Dominic. It happened so fast that the team leader wasn't really sure he had seen it. Tilt put his hands on Dominic's backpack and effortlessly leapfrogged over the smaller boy. Terrific, Cicero groaned to himself. The last thing a high-altitude expedition needed was a hot dog. His eyes shifted down the line. 16-year-old Joey Tenuta was smaller and less impressive, but rock solid, with a reputation as a great team player. Also, he had ice experience. Every winter, his parents took him to Alaska to climb frozen waterfalls. He knew that Summit Athletic was also pushing to put at least one girl on the team. Bryn Fiedler was the obvious choice. The country's top-rated female alpinist under 17, she was known to be a smart climber. Tall, 5'9", and blessed with great arm strength, she was also tough. She had to be. Mountaineering was a sport dominated by men. Women climbers had to be bulldogs to get the respect they deserved, and Cicero figured the young ones had to try even harder than that. Bryn aside, there weren't any girls who caught his eye, except the team leader stepped out into the track and plucked a Walkman and sunglasses off Samantha Moon, a 15-year-old brunette in a No Fear t-shirt. She was not only keeping pace with the other kids, but also windmilling air guitar as she ran. As the headphones cleared her ears, the pantomime power chord stopped, and so did Sammy. She stared at Cicero in surprise. "What's up?" "This isn't a fun run," he informed her hotly. "Who said it was?" she retorted, snatching the headphones from his hands. "People die climbing Mount Everest," Cicero said. "I'll wash you out right now if you're not going to train seriously." "I am training seriously," she shot back. "This," more air guitar, "is just my style." "Not on my expedition," he told her. "Well, why didn't you say so?" She set the Walkman and glasses down at the side of the track and rejoined the running group, leaving Cicero shaking his head. Devlin tossed him an offhand shrug. "If you don't like her attitude, cut her." Cicero was tempted, but he held himself back. The truth was he didn't know a single top-notch alpinist who didn't have a bit of a screw loose. Aloud, he said, "I'm keeping my options open." Devlin pointed to a 15-year-old who sported the brightest orange hair Cicero had ever seen. "What do you think of the red-headed kid?" "Easy to rescue," the expedition leader laughed mirthlessly. "We'll be able to spot him on the summit ridge all the way from base camp." "Seriously," Devlin persisted. Cicero followed the bouncing shock of hair. He was very much an in-the-middle teenager. Not tall, not short, not fat, not thin. The kind of kid who'd get overlooked a lot, if it weren't for that lighthouse beacon on his head. "Lazy," he observed, noting the lackluster stride. "Not a good sign. But, like I said, it's early. What's the big interest?" "That's Perry Noonan," Devlin replied. Cicero snapped to attention. "The Perry Noonan? He's here?" "That's him," Devlin affirmed. "Ah, Tony, we talked about this. I'm not doing anybody a favor putting a climber on that mountain who's not prepared." Devlin met his gaze, and it was Cicero who looked away first. "This is my decision," the team leader insisted. "That's in the contract. I'm the boss, right?" "You're the boss of the expedition," Devlin agreed, "but there's always another boss, a higher boss, with the power to say something like, 'Maybe we won't climb Everest this year.' You know." Cicero thought back to the time on the north wall of the Eiger, when an ice screw snapped in two. He dropped 60 vertical feet and swung back into the rock face, shattering one ankle and spraining the other. He didn't panic back then. Who had the time? It would take all his skill and concentration to get down alive. After what he had seen and heard today, Cap Cicero was officially worried. Let me see if I can get one more chapter in here. Well, I'm going to get part of a chapter in, I guess. Chapter 3. The Summit Athletic Sports Training Facility in High Falls, Colorado was nestled amid snow-capped peaks in the Rocky Mountains. Built on a plateau of 8,500 feet above sea level, it was by far the highest such complex in the United States. At that, it was still nearly 2 vertical miles lower than Everest Base Camp and more than 4 miles below the summit. The facility had hosted some famous names from the world of sports: Tiger Woods, Michael Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Tony Hawk, and the entire U.S. Women's World Cup soccer team. But never had the place seen the kind of workouts that were going on as the 19 remaining candidates fought to land spots on Cap Cicero's Summit Quest team. For 3 hours each morning, the class trained in the huge gymnasium. This included weightlifting, aerobic machines, calisthenics, and hours practicing rope techniques on the massive 60-foot climbing wall built especially for this group. It was a grueling effort, but nothing compared with what was in store for the afternoon. Cicero and his trainers would take them on 6-hour hikes over some of the roughest and steepest terrain in North America. "Cap, I gotta stop," gasped Cameron Mackey after 9 miles under a 30-pound pack. The trail they were following went up and down so often it had been dubbed the toilet seat. Get it? Toilet seats going up and down. Climbers were notorious for nicknaming routes. "What's the problem?" asked Cicero, barely breathing hard. "The problem is we're dying back here," Tilt complained belligerently. "If we rack ourselves up in boot camp, how are we supposed to climb Everest?" Cicero nodded but never slackened the pace. "That's the rule for regular mountaineering. For high-altitude ascents in the Himalayas, you go till it hurts and then work through it. You have to get used to carrying on when your body says quit." Sammy looked out over a dizzying precipice. "Man, can you imagine hang gliding from here? What a rush." "A rush to the hospital," commented Bryn wryly. "Once they helicopter your broken carcass out of the trees." "You'll never summit Big E watching your back like that," Sammy warned. "I may not get to the top, but I guarantee I'll make it back to the bottom," Bryn said seriously. "Climbing is about figuring the angles, predicting the hazards, and avoiding them." "In some textbook," scoffed Sammy. "It's an extreme world out there. You gotta be extreme with it. My boyfriend and I tried bungee last week. Caleb liked it, but I say it's a little artificial. I mean, once you bottom out, you're just hanging there." "And your folks let you do all this?" Bryn asked, amazed. Her own climbing career was a constant source of conflict between her mother and father. Not that Mom and Dad needed much help to fuel an argument. She fought off a wave of guilt. They would have split up regardless of whether her hobby was climbing mountains or collecting stamps. Sammy shrugged. "Dad thinks climbing E would calm me down, but what I really want to do is... There's this underwater cave off of Australia where you can scuba with sleeping sharks." Bryn had to laugh. "You never met a risk you didn't like, right?" "Just one," said Sammy Moon. "Living a boring life." Lenny Kazuk, all right, that's how I'm going to say it, Kazuk, waved a video camera in their faces. He was the guide in charge of documenting the expedition for the Summit Quest website. "Ah, come on," Cameron rasped. "You all agreed to give your interviews for the site," the cameraman guide reminded them. "You mean E?" said Sammy. "Who cares what we do in boot camp?" "We think we can build up some interest in who's going to make the team. Let's see a little of that can-do attitude. Say something positive." "I'm positive I'm gonna throw up," Cameron supplied. Kazuk, Lenny's mind-boggling last name, was actually pronounced Kachuk. There it is. Okay, now I'm going to say Kachuk. Or, as he himself explained, a sneeze between two Ks. A few of the candidates started calling him Sneezy. Not only did the moniker stick, but it sparked a whole Seven Dwarfs nicknaming craze. The zombified kitchen manager became Sleepy. The web designer, who never looked straight at anybody and whose best friends were probably all computers, was known as Bashful. Andrea Oberman, the expedition doctor, who was also a world-class climber, was Doc. No one was dopey, or at least not yet. It was Dominic's opinion that the name was being held in reserve for whoever turned out to be the dopey enough to claim it. Dominic felt that the smart money was on tilt. Surely, the loudmouth was gonna open his big yap one time too many and get himself bounced. Others insisted he was such a lock for Grumpy that to call him anything else was almost a crime. Then there was Happy. He was a 15-year-old climber from California who always seemed to be in a good mood. According to Joey, his roommate, he smiled in his sleep. No matter how high Cicero twisted the agony meter on the afternoon marathon, Happy always seemed pretty thrilled about it. "You think this is hard?" he'd say cheerfully. "This is nothing." And he'd launch into a story of a killer rock climb in Yosemite. Happy loved the cafeteria food. He thought the small dorm-style rooms they shared were the ultimate in luxury. Each night he spent hours in the computer lab, emailing his hordes of friends back home about how thrilled, excited, rapturous, and generally pumped he was. "He's like a ray of sunshine," commented Joey. "I can't stand him." That left Snow White. By unanimous agreement, the title was awarded to team leader Cap Cicero because, as Sammy put it, he's the unfairest of them all. Cicero never seemed to run out of new and exciting ways to take the group through torture. When they got used to the 30-pound packs, he made them carry 40. When they mastered the rough terrain, he found rougher. One time, he led them on a mountain bike 30 miles to the top of a cliff called the Edge of the Earth. There, he had them descend on ropes with the bicycles strapped on their backs. "You think this is hard," beamed Happy. "At least it's cool. One time I got lost in the pinnacles, and it was 105 degrees. When the indoor climbing drills became automatic, Cicero had a wrinkle to add to that, too. He led them through the same maneuvers, lugging another climber who was designated injured and unable to help. "You can forget about me doing this on the real climb," Tilt grunted, struggling with Todd Messner's dead weight. "If one of you losers wipes out on Everest, consider yourself lucky if I don't step on your face on my way to the summit." "And if you wipe out?" challenged Bryn, lowering Perry on a rope. "It'll never happen," Tilt replied. And watching his strength and confidence on the climbing wall, Bryn figured he was probably right. That afternoon, 5 hours into a 6-hour hike, Happy passed out, cold, halfway up a rock scramble called the Devil's Staircase. "You think this is hard?" he began, and then disappeared down the granite wedge. Joey reached for his receding roommate, but overbalanced and fell. The unconscious California slid past Sammy and right between Tilt's legs. He was just about to drop off the slab when Bryn managed to trap him by pressing her backpack against the rock. Luckily, Dr. Oberman was right there. After some water and a short break with his head between his knees, Happy was able to finish the workout. The scare did nothing to wipe the permagrin off his face. Medical log, psych profiles, interview with Dominic Alexis. So this is the doctor interviewing Dominic. "Dr. Oberman, how do you feel when Happy fainted today?" Dominic: "I was sorry for him." Dr. Oberman: "Anything else?" Dominic: "What do you mean?" Dr. Oberman: "Fear, maybe, that it could happen to you?" Dominic: "My dad has been training Chris and me. We know all of the warning signs: dehydration, exhaustion." Dr. Oberman: "Some of the kids have been complaining that Cap is too hard on them." Excuse me. Dominic: "Cap Cicero is a legend. I've read all his books. I practically memorized his 1999 K2 expedition. I can't believe I got to meet him." Dr. Oberman: "Does it bother you that you're the youngest and the smallest?" Dominic: "I'm used to it. I train with Chris all the time." Dr. Oberman: "Your brother has an excellent reputation. Is that why you were so obsessed with winning the contest, to keep up with him?" Dominic: "I don't think I was obsessed." Dr. Oberman: "The contest people say you showed up with the 145 drink caps and 36 energy bar wrappers. You had to know the chances were slim. What makes you keep trying?" Dominic: "I couldn't find a V." Cicero looked up from the folder at Dr. Oberman. What did you interview him for? I told you he's not going." "I was curious about him," the doctor admitted. "He's such an intense little guy." "And what'd you find out?" She grinned. "To be honest, that's that he's honest, decent, dedicated, motivated, healthy as a horse. Exactly the kind of person you'd want on an expedition." "Yeah," Cicero snorted. "If he was a foot taller, 2 years older, and 40 pounds heavier." She laughed. "You might also be interested to know that he's a huge fan of yours." "Good," said Cicero. "I'll give him an autographed copy of my memoirs. He'll need something to read while his brother is busy climbing Mount Everest." The next morning, Lenny, Sneezy Kachuk, got up bright and early so he could film the Everest hopefuls coming downstairs for breakfast. He was the first to see the damage. In the small lobby outside the cafeteria, someone had knocked over an end table, breaking 2 of its legs and smashing a crystal lamp. 10 minutes later, Cicero stood beside him, wiping the sleep from bloodshot eyes. "You got me up at 6 a.m. to show me a pile of broken glass?" Sneezy looked worried. "Think about our kids, Cap. They're used to walking knife-edge ridges over 1,000-foot drops. They're not exactly the clumsy type." "Don't talk to me in riddles. I'm not even awake," complained Cicero. "Are you saying someone did this on purpose?" "Either that or there was a big fight last night. We're driving these kids pretty hard, and there's a lot at stake here." Cap sighed. "I could have taken those orthodontists up Nanga Parbat, but no. I had to play hall monitor to a gang of juvenile delinquents." He ran his hand through his thick, uncombed hair. All right, I'll talk to him. All right, so that's it for today. So we got to know a lot of the kids. I'm pretty sure that when we get into the real nitty-gritty of the story, it's going to be a smaller group of kids because I'm only counting like 4 or 5 kids on the cover. So we'll see. Anyways, have a good day.